Hi, everybody. So this is the beginning of my launch, I guess you could say, of my pre-trip. My name's Tori McNally, and I am Avalon Enchanted. I'm actually going to be leaving for Egypt, Cairo, Luxor, and a couple of other cities and towns starting on January 7th. And my plan is to share the trip on my Facebook and also on Instagram. So that way people can enjoy the different things that are going on. This trip in particular is all about checking out the energies of the different temples and tombs along the Nile. So tonight, I wanted to talk about the first place that we're going to be going, which is Luxor Temple. Okay, so we're actually kicking off this trip officially, I guess you could say, on January 9th. I leave on the 7th. It takes me until the 8th in order to land in Cairo. And then we, in earnest, start the trip on the 9th and go until the 25th. We're also going to be going to Jordan. So I'm going to be doing a short video highlighting each of the some of the different sites. Okay, so when you're actually seeing my lives or seeing my videos, you'll have an idea of what some of the background information is. So this way people can enjoy it. So one of our first trips or stops is going to be Luxor Temple, which is a very large ancient Egyptian temple complex located right next to the Nile River in what's now known as Luxor. Originally, it was Thebes. And it was constructed in 1400 BCE. It was known as the Southern Sanctuary in Egyptian. I'm not even going to attempt to butcher it because I don't want to offend anybody. But this is one of the two primary temples on the East Bank, the other being Karnak. So we had the East Bank and we had the West Bank. One side of the Nile was pretty much for the living, and then the other side of the Nile, the West Bank, was pretty much for the dead, the tombs. So if you hear of Valley of the Kings, Valley of the Queens, that's West Bank. So just want to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to actually be going there at moonrise. I want to say it's on the 9th. But this is going to be something that is going to be interesting because we're going to be able to see the moonrise up and around the temple with all the different columns, all the different statues, and things like that. I was there last year in October, early November. And it was such a wonderful experience, I decided I needed to go back. But Luxor Temple was a temple for the living. In many cases, it was viewed as a temple that was used for rejuvenation of the kingship. Many times the pharaohs or the kings would actually be crowned sometimes there at Luxor. We had Alexander the Great when the Romans actually stepped into that area of the Middle East. He claimed that area and was crowned at Luxor. So it's definitely interesting. We also have lots of different chapels. One of the things that when I'm talking about these different temple complexes, you're going to find that there's a lot of different little temples or rooms that the Egyptians built into these temple complexes. In many cases, they were dedicated to individual gods or goddesses. So we're going to find that there were chapels that were there that were built by Amenhotep III of the 18th dynasty, and also Alexander the Great. We're also going to find that there's parts of the temple that were built by Tutankhamun as well as Ramses II. You know, Ramses II was known as the best king, I guess you could say, or the best pharaoh. He had a very long reign. And it was one of those things where things were good under his reign. So he has a very good, I guess you could say, profile in terms of how he's perceived today. So it's built actually of sandstone. I have some notes here, so I just wanted to kind of keep myself on track. But I just, like I said, I just wanted to give people some ideas of what they're going to be seeing. It's actually a temple that's built of sandstone. And interestingly enough, it's actually referred to as Nubian sandstone and Nubia, which is part of Sudan and what's now southern Egypt. That's really where the area of Nubia came from. So we're going to find that also that when the Egyptians were building or crafting their temples, this particular temple was seen as a, I almost want to say like a trick of the eye. Illusionism, I guess, is the best way to describe it, where they had different things that were purposely set, even though they were different sizes from far away, they looked the same size, especially some of the obelisks that are there, some of which the Luxor Temple had actually 2 obelisks in particular, a smaller one closer to the west, which is now in the middle of Paris. And then there was also one not of the same height that was still there. But it was basically laid out according to equal height, using this illusionism, and it enhanced the relative distances, making it look the same size and more pleasing to the eye, which is kind of interesting. One of the quotes that I see here symbolically, it's a visual and spatial effect to emphasize the height and the distance from the wall, enhancing the already existing pathway. So this is something that was used pretty much throughout the ages, you know, from the Middle Ages, Luxor was still being used and people were actually still living around the temple. The Luxor Temple, I guess you kind of almost call it a campus, people were actually living quite close to it and living at it. And over time, you had more and more people living over there and around there, which definitely created almost like a little microcosm. Over time, though, it was not refinished, but it was cleaned up. And there was a lot that was brought back to its original glory as best as it could. It's part of the UNESCO site. So for example, Chichen Itza is part of the UNESCO site. You're going to find that Karnak, when we visit there, is part of the UNESCO site. Stonehenge is also part of the UNESCO site. So these are protected sites that are very important to the cultures around the world. So the idea, though, is that most of these temples in particular were along the Nile River because the Nile provided sustenance. The Nile also provided transportation. It also provided the ability to move goods around. And so with that being said, that's where a lot of the festivals were celebrated. A lot of the feasts and a lot of the divine dedications were held there. There's actually what's known as an avenue or the path of God that connects Karnak with Luxor, which is about 3 miles away. So when we actually finish looking at Luxor, the next day we're going to be going to Karnak, which I'll be talking about in another video. But this is certainly a temple complex that had all sorts of different little stations in it for people to be able to connect with their deity. Because as we know, the Egyptians believed in a polytheistic type of way. They had different gods, they had different goddesses. It wasn't until who am I thinking of? It wasn't until one particular pharaoh came in and then changed everything and it basically caused a total uproar, which we'll be talking about at another time. The other thing to also mention is that there's also a working mosque that's also connected or on that same property and has been built on part of this temple. So it's something that is still very much alive. It's something that is still very much used and is active. Like I said, hundreds of years of construction from different pharaohs like Amenhotep III, Ramses II, Tutankhamun, all put their mark on this particular site. And they did this a lot with a lot of the different temples around the different areas. So there's also a life-size statue of Queen Nefertari, who we're going to also be talking about when we talk about the Valley of the Kings. She's actually the wife of Ramses II, who was considered the best or the greatest leader for quite a while. So this was a celebration of their lives. This was a celebration of their reign, very different from what was shown on the West Bank, which is kind of interesting. So what else do I want to say? Just kind of scrolling through some of my notes here, because I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys information that makes sense and is accurate. Because as a historian, as a history background person, I feel like that's really super, super important. All right. So one of the things I also wanted to mention is that in the Egyptian religion, it was basically worshiping the sun god, Ra in particular. And the whole dichotomy of this is that there were different gods and goddesses that came from the sun god, and they all handled different things. So they were all one of those things that they celebrated them. They also made sure that they dressed them, fed them, and things like that within these different temples. So I hope this gives you a little bit of information about what I'm going to be doing over the course of this series. And I hope it also gives you a little bit of information about what to expect when I visit Luxor. So like I said, that's going to be our first stop on the 9th. And my hope is to do some live as well as some recorded videos. So that way you'll have a chance to see some of the different areas. It's something that's heavily visited. It's definitely in Thebes or in Luxor, it's definitely a thriving city that definitely gets a lot of tourists, as well as a lot of local people that are there and are living and enjoying the city. So I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone enjoys this video, I guess you could say, journey. If you have any questions, definitely throw them into the chat below and let me know, or you can direct message me. So that way you can, I can answer those questions for you. If I don't know the answer, I have people that I can definitely reach out to who can certainly provide me answers regarding this stuff too. You may actually be meeting a friend or two of mine while I'm on the tour who live in Egypt. So that way you'll get an idea of what life is like in Egypt. You know, it's very different from our lives here in the United States, or maybe even potentially wherever you're seeing this video. So if you are looking for a reading or even an Egyptian Reiki healing, which I'll talk about later on, message me, hit me up. You can message me either on Facebook or on Instagram, Tori McNally, or Avalon Enchanted, or go to my website, which is Tori. My email is tori@avalonenchanted.com. You can also visit my website to find out more about me and what I do. With different mediumship, with different lessons and teachings, as well as card readings, past life regression, and so much more. So have a pleasant day, night, or whenever you're watching this. Take care, and I will see you for the next video, which will be Karnak. Bye.